Hi guys, welcome to my guide. One of the first things I want to cover is stats because stats are so important when you want to build your character, particularly a DPS character or even a cleric. It's really important, and your stats are going to help balance everything on your character, and a lot of the other things you begin to build on your character are going to revolve around stats. So let's check it out. Thanks for watching, and be sure to check the description for links and timestamps for specific points you might be looking for. So the first stat that we're going to look at is power, and power is really simple. The more power you have, the more damage you deal. There is no cap. The more, the better. It's a great stat to have. One thing that does trip up people a little bit is after about 100,000 power, there is a bit of a diminishing return, but it's not a diminishing return. Because I suck, I'm just going to throw that out there. I would definitely check out Jane's website for more information about that, because she does have a really good calculator that will help you determine your DPS percentage gained from your power after that 100,000 mark. So after power comes armor penetration, and the easiest way to remember what armor penetration does is it penetrates your enemy's armor. Your enemy's armor in this case is defense, and it's the first counter stat we're going to talk about. Defense basically counters armor penetration. It reduces the amount of damage your enemy takes, and obviously we don't want that. So by increasing your armor penetration, you can plow through your enemy's defenses. You'll want your armor penetration to cap at around 85,000. A little higher is okay, but definitely not lower. And that is for when you're running endgame content like Infernal Citadel or Tower of the Mad Mage, or honestly I would recommend it even for just running around Avernus, which is the newest area of Module 18. Now, even though we talked about our enemies having defense, we can also have defense, and that will help decrease the amount of damage that we're taking from our enemies. And just because we're a DPS doesn't mean we can be squishy. So I would definitely recommend increasing your defense to at least 55,000 when joining any kind of endgame raid or party. For solo purposes, I wouldn't worry too much about it. This is going to sound like a song. Critical strike equals critical chance, and critical chance equals critical hits, and critical hits equals extra damage to your attacks. Just putting it quickly because it's a mouthful. It can also be negated by critical avoidance, kind of like the whole deflections. I meant to say defense situation with armor penetration, and that's okay. To cap off critical strike, you'll need 85,000. 85,000 is kind of the magic number for stats, at least offensive stats, that you'll need when looking at endgame content, so just keep that number in mind. Again, a little over is okay, but a little less is not okay. And yeah, I don't have anything else to add to that. Critical avoidance. It's definitely one of the least important stats, but I would still up it to around 55,000, 60,000, because like I said before, you don't want to be a squishy nugget. You want to be a tough nugget, because a squishy nugget is a dead nugget, and a dead nugget cannot put out any damage, and you would be a pretty crappy DPS. So at least at endgame, invest some points or some stats into it. By the way, by nugget, I meant character. So for our next stat, accuracy, more or less accuracy just ensures the chance that your attack is actually going to theoretically hit your enemy, because your enemy has deflection, which is the counter stat to accuracy. And accuracy, like most of the other stats so far, actually all of them, you want 85,000. 85,000 is the magic number. I'm going to say it again. Higher is okay, lower is not. A lot of people seem to get that confused. And it's really great if people don't have that misunderstanding, because it's so important to be at those caps. So I realized I'm a bit of a dum-dum, and I actually forgot to mention deflection in the original video. So I just took an old video and I'm talking over it. But deflection, again, 55,000 like the rest of your defensive stats. Just thought I would throw that in there. Okay, back to our original video. So next is combat advantage, and basically combat advantage increases your damage when the game considers your position to be advantageous. That is confusing, I understand, but the best way to tell if you have combat advantage or not during combat is to look below your character and see if there's a blue circle. If there is a blue circle, that means you have combat advantage, which that's great. Now, combat advantage can be negated, again, those counter stats, but it can be negated by awareness. And awareness is basically, you know, you're aware of your surroundings. I don't know, but that's what the game calls it. And to cap off combat advantage, it's a little different than the other offensive stats because you actually need 135,000 to cap it off. When looking into endgame content, I honestly wouldn't put too much importance on it early on in the game because it is a really hard stat to cap if you don't have top gear and top enchantments, but it is something you will need to consider capping when looking into endgame content. Awareness, it counters combat advantage. You want at least 55,000, kind of like the rest of the defensive stats. Oh my god, have I been talking about stats for like 7 minutes now? That's crazy. Okay, anyways, let's take a look at our extra stats. AP means action points. Action points help you use your daily powers more often. That glowing gauge at the bottom, that's filled with action points. Recharge speed basically just makes your encounters cool down quicker. Companion influence just gives you extra stats from your companions. I think it might be broken, but I'm not really sure. I just don't notice it actually sharing the extra stats it's supposed to, so it may or may not be bugged. Can't really promise, but maybe someone out there knows. I don't know. If someone knows, just leave a comment and I can pin it, because I think you can do that on YouTube. Next is movement speed. And movement speed is great for running faster. Can be really great in a dungeon because usually the first one to the mob gets the most damage dealt on that mob. So some people up their movement speed literally for that purpose and that purpose only. I am potentially one of those people, but I'm not the worst one out there. There are far worse, trust me. Next is critical severity, and it basically just makes your critical hits hit that much harder. So it's really nice to have, and it's definitely one of the underrated stats that a lot of people don't seem to pay attention to. However, I wouldn't prioritize it, but it's still a really useful stat to consider, look at, understand, and invest at least a little bit into it, such as using a Vorpal, which we'll talk about later. Alright, now we can look at our ability scores. It's important to understand your stats first before you invest in your ability scores, because later on you might have to waste a retraining token, which kind of sucks. So the first one we want to look at is strength, because strength is so important. It increases basically your damage, just straight up, a physical damage boost, and it's not one to be overlooked. Any rogue, any build, doesn't matter what, you should always be investing in strength. When it comes to deciding your second ability score, a lot of people debate between Constitution, Dexterity, and Charisma. Constitution increases your maximum hit points and your action points. Dexterity increases your movement speed and your critical severity, and Charisma increases, or actually it decreases your recharge speed, I should say. And it also grants some companion influence. Yeah, that thing that I think is broken. But personally, I prefer Constitution because I prefer to use my dailies a little more often. And also the maximum hit points is really nice to have. Makes you less of a squishy potato. By potato, I mean character. But yeah, that's just my opinion. But depending on what kind of build or what kind of gameplay you prefer, any of those three stats are great to pair up with the strength stat. I got the power! Okay, let's look at our powers. So there's Whisper Knife and Assassin. Assassin is just Master Infiltrator, renamed for those OG players out there that are looking to get back into Neverwinter. You definitely should. So first things first, can I just mention how much I love the layout everything's just grouped together and it's great. Looking at now our at-wills though, first one is Duelist Flurry. It's fantastic. It has really high damage, really fast casting time, and there's no reason you shouldn't have it slotted. Next is Cloud of Steel. It's very quick casting, lower damage, but ranged. Gloaming Cut is high damage, but really slow casting time. And it's okay, but it's not really my cup of tea, so that's up to you. And then the last one is Sly Flourish, which good casting time, okay damage. So between Cloud of Steel, Gloaming Cut, and Sly Flourish, you can choose which one you prefer. But personally, I wouldn't really say one ranks above the other. They're all kind of the same to me. Next we have encounter powers, and I'm actually going to outline AoE first because you do have a different AoE setup compared to single target. So first is Blade Flurry. Definitely stealth, cast it, and then there will be no cooldown because you stealthed, so you can cast it again. So it's really great for like hitting that whole AoE effect. Personally, I really like Path of the Blade. I find it does actually pretty good damage if you're dealing with tougher mobs. I mean, if they're softer mobs, by the time you cast it, there's no point. So that's up to you. Alternately, some people might prefer to use a more stronger single target instead. But yeah, Smoke Bomb I find does really low damage, but I wouldn't recommend it. Then for my last slot is where I put a single target attack. Joke's on you. And I use Assassinate because it deals the highest damage of any of the encounters. And it's just, there's always that one straggler at the end, and it's great to have a strong single target attack that you can just finish off that last enemy and move on to the next. So that's what I would recommend for encounter powers. Oh, moving on to single target. Lashing Blade is really good. It's a really strong hit. It has a low cooldown, and magnitude damage is great, so no complaints. Another great one is Wicked Reminder. Again, really great damage. A bit of a longer cooldown, which doesn't particularly excite me, so I actually personally don't use it often, but I know a lot of rogues who do. So it's optional. Personally, I would switch it with Death Strike because I find Death Strike deals only a little less damage and it has a lesser cooldown, and it places you behind your enemy, so you get that good old combat advantage. So it's really great for especially an enemy that just seems to be twirling around like a ballerina, because there's always that boss, particularly Orcus in Castle Never. Then last but not least is Assassinate, because I already said it has the highest damage, the cooldown is decent, and the casting time doesn't take eons. So moving on, there are daily powers. Whirlwind of Blade sucks, guys. I don't know why I see so many rogues encouraging other rogues to use it, but it sucks. What you should be using is Shocking Execution. Perfect for single target, amazing damage. It's great. And on top of it, if your enemy is already low on health, it automatically refills your AP gauge to 50%. The other one I like to use is Bloodbath. It's great for when you're in a sticky situation. Maybe the healer can't heal you quick enough. Your health stone is on cooldown and you just need those extra few seconds. It's great. And the damage is pretty good too. It can be used in either AoE or on single target. So I usually do Bloodbath and Shocking Execution. I feel like I should mention, now that I'm watching this somewhat edited video, Bloodbath can really save your arse because you become basically untouchable while you're whipping around in the air. Okay, next is mechanics. I think everyone knows mechanics. I mean, for the most important part, you can dodge, and then you can stealth. That's really all you need to know. No joke. And after that is our class features, the ever debatable class features. It's really hard to choose the right ones because it really depends on the combat you're doing. Invisible Infiltrator refills your AP after the use of a daily, so it's always a nice one to go back to. Infiltrator's action gives you combat advantage after a daily, but if you're in a party that is already giving you a lot of combat advantage, I wouldn't use it. Instead, I would probably use Oppressive Darkness because it increases your damage while you have combat advantage, and if you have it frequently, that's a great way to boost your damage. So it's a great option to use when you're in a good party. Infiltrator's Action is good to use when you're in a bad party, which, no offense to bad parties, I've been in one. Other options include Sneak Attack, increases your movement speed, and what I like about Sneak Attack is while you're stealthed, it reduces your cooldowns. So that's nice. Well, your cooldown rate, but it still reduces your cooldowns, and you will actually notice a difference. Okay. Anyways, between these four, it kind of just depends on what you're doing. Personally, I would probably run Sneak Attack and Oppressive Darkness, or maybe I would switch Oppressive Darkness. I meant Sneak Attack with the Invisible Infiltrator. It's hard to say, but just call it by ear. Maybe you have one that suits your playstyle more, and that's totally okay. Go with whatever makes you happy. That's all I can say, really. So, yeah. Okay, let's move on to feats. So, right away, we're going to go to Toxic Blades because adds damage over time, and it's easy to keep up, and it's really good. The other one sucks anyways, so there's no reason you shouldn't take it. So, Pikachu, I choose you! Then we have Master of Shadows, which your stealth drains faster, but it recharges faster, 50% slower and faster. Well, actually, no, 50% faster in general anyway. And that's really great to have because it's not like you're passively using your stealth anyways. You're just stealthing, encounter, and it gets used up right away. So basically, your stealth recharges 50% faster. That's all you really need to know from that. Pikachu, I choose you! I think I'm slowly losing my noodle. I'm going crazy! Real talk though, guys, video editing can actually be really time consuming and really boring, so it's normal that I'm going crazy right now. Okay, so Duelist Expertise, there's a bit of a debate, and I personally really don't want to explain it all because there's a lot to explain and a lot of numbers to work with. But there's Duelist Expertise and then there's Skullcracker. And personally, both are kind of on equal footing, and a lot of people, at least a lot of rogues, recommend Skullcracker. So just to keep it simple, I mean, if you want to get in the numbers, you can, but I'm gonna say go with Skullcracker just to be safe. Next is Back Alley Tactics. Easy one. Your action points take a long time to fill up, so while it's empty, you're getting damage during that time, so that's a easy plus damage boost. And then we have the last feat. Both of them really suck. You could literally flip a coin and decide, and it's not going to affect you. Basically, one summons a shadowy potato to deal the last combo of Duelist Flurry, and then Execution, when your enemy is below 20% HP, there's a chance that you can execute it, quotations, execute, and deal 200 magnitude damage, which honestly isn't a lot when you consider Lashing Blade deals like 600 or something. So personally, I always go with Shadow's Flurry because I find actually the percent chance rate of it spawning is between 7 and 8% from personal testing because I was curious. Yeah, I don't really know what else to add to that. Disclaimer, guys, I don't have all my boon points. I know, shame on me. I'm a terrible person. I'm not qualified to make this video. Kind of kidding. I hope I'm qualified, but I mean, that's not for me to decide. Anyways, when we're looking at boons, there are two main ones that we want to invest in for each tier. I think that's how you pronounce it. Tier? I don't know. But it's power and HP. Each tier gives you 1,250 power, and 5,000 HP. Now, if we multiply that by 4 each, that is 5,000 power and 20,000 HP. That's about as good as it's going to get from your boons. So as we invest points into our boons, you'll notice that some of the master boons unlock, and I would honestly go with Bloodlust. It's about the best one. I wouldn't say any of them are exceptional, but it's about the best you're going to get for a, to complement your DPS. So I would definitely max that one out 3 out of 3. Now, some of the other boons that once you start racking up more points, I would definitely look into maxing out the different powers. There's Demonic, Cultist, Dino, and Necrotic. Not gonna lie, I can't read that from my computer screen right now. Another one that I like to really invest in is the Speed one, which actually, now that I'm thinking of it, you should definitely invest in the enemy ones because they do increase your damage to that specific kind of enemy. And I mean, that's 4 different types of enemies, very common ones too. So there's no reason you shouldn't add points into that. But yeah, looking at the tier 5 ones, you can only choose 2. I definitely recommend taking the action point gain and the recharge speed. There's also a critical severity one that can be really worth your while. And yeah, that's my recommendation. So for my gear, you've probably noticed I'm using a lot of different items that are not listed in my written guide on MMO Mines. And you're right, I'm not. I found it was holding me back on my solo play, so I just took that old gear and I stuffed it in the bank. And when it's time to run raids or join groups, I just pull it out, I switch my enchantments, and I go with it. Now, a little disclaimer while I'm switching my gear. It's like almost 5 in the morning right now, and I've been editing this video for like 3.5 hours. So if I'm sounding like, I don't know, not as enthusiastic or boring, I'm really sorry. I didn't mean to, but I really want to finish this before I go to bed. So taking a look at the gear that is best in slot right now for Trickster Rogues in the game, I would definitely recommend looking at the Lion Head or Lion Guard's headgear. You can get it from the Avernus campaign store, and you basically need to run Infernal Citadel and get these little trinkets, and then you can buy it. So if you're not endgame, don't stress it. Any of the Avernus gear would do. Next piece is the Ebony hide, and it comes from Stardock. I believe it's the Warden Expeditions that give you the gear, but I'd have to double check that. It's either the WEs or the FEs. Can't remember. It's the reason it's best in slot is because its equip power, or its equip bonus, basically allows you to stack up power, an additional 10% power. And 10% can be a lot when you have, for example, 200,000 power. That's 20,000 power that's being added to yours. So it's really good to have. An alternative could be the Executioner's Black Attire, which I don't actually have one on me right now, but you can buy it from the Mysterious Merchant behind your stronghold. Your guild leader will have to summon one though, and it does cost resources. So if you're looking to get that, talk to your guild leader first. Moving on, the Primal Raid arm pieces. They come from Shalt. They're really old, level 70. Yeah, you can kind of tell by the stats and item level, but again, they allow you to stack up another 5% power. So added onto that armor, that's like a 15% power increase, and that's really strong. So it's definitely a combination that you want to follow, and any skilled endgame knowledgeable rogue will most likely tell you the exact same. Everyone builds their rogues a little differently, but these two items are definitely a staple that I notice amongst a lot of Trickster rogues. Alright, so next we are looking at the weapons, and actually I'm still kind of catching up from Module 17, and I'm pretty lazy too. I mean, I've been playing this game 7 years, so I actually haven't really been doing a whole lot in the game as per like dungeons and whatnot, just a few here and there. But the best weapons you can get are the Lionheart weapons. They have higher base damage compared to any other weapon, which that alone makes them best in slot, but they also have a really good set bonus that increases your damage when your stamina is full. So if you can get them, great. If not, alabaster weapons or even burnished weapons will work just fine until you can get them. So now taking a look at the boots, we have the Infernal Forged Gaiters. You can buy them with the seals. Don't ask me the name of the seals, but if you do some of the big heroic encounters in Avernus, you will have no problem getting these. You can get them pretty quick. So I would recommend these boots. You could also switch them out for the Heels of Fury, because the Heels of Fury does definitely have a better bonus, 3% damage to your melee attacks, and you're purely melee, so it's optional. I still use the Heels of Fury, but the Gaiters are also a decent option. Maybe not the best, but it's an option. Looking at the cloak and the belt and the artifact, it's a artifact set, and it's old like you wouldn't believe, but it's still best in slot. The set bonus makes all the difference, and despite it being like 3 or 4 years old now, I don't even know how long, it is still best in slot. That extra % damage is really nice. Next is the shirt, and when your stamina is over 75% chance, you get a damage increase of 3%. I'm pretty sure there's level 80 shirts that also give that bonus, but I've had no luck, and that's the best one I've gotten so far. And I can't tell you how many Emmys, WEs, and FEs I've legitimately ran to, try and get that, but nope, I'm stuck with it. Then there's the pants, and honestly, any level 80 pants will honestly do at this point, because none of them have bonuses even worthwhile. The only thing I would try and recommend is maybe getting something with defense, because defense it's not necessary, but it makes it easier to stack up defense. But either way, my rings aren't the best. I haven't actually gotten any rings from anywhere yet, because apparently I suck. At least not any decent rings. They generally come from the Tower of the Mad Mage, I think it is. The Tower or the Lair, I get them confused. But you can also buy them on the auction house, because they do come unbound. I mean, it's your call. I would recommend at least getting some form of these Avernus. Or no, it's the Underdark rings. Did I really just say Underdark? I meant Under Mountain. I would definitely try and upgrade them, because I mean Shadewalker and this I think it's called the Ebony Saint. I can't read it on my screen, guys. I'm sorry. Reading it in this video editor, it's a really small window compared to my actual screen, and I'm really having to memorize this by heart. I'm sorry. Looking at my artifacts, the Wyvern Venom coated knives are pretty good. They offer some decent stats. There is also the Book of the Vile whatever, and it offers power, which is nice. Arcturia's music box also offers some pretty good offensive stats. So yeah. Oh, and then there's the Trobriand's ring as well that offers power. So anything newer, I like to say the Generation 2 artifacts, any of those that give you power, I would recommend, because they do offer a whole lot more than the old Generation 1 artifacts. So, yeah. Let's switch our gear back. Gosh, that was horrible. I should just call it a night, but I so badly want to finish this. Okay, so let's take a look at our companions next. One of the first things that anyone, any player, any class should upgrade is their bonding runestones, because your bonding runestones basically share a large portion of your companion stats with you, and if you have an augment type companion, you can have even more stats, and it's a massive amount of stats, and I'm not gonna lie, like 70 to 80% of your total stats probably are going to come from your bonding runestones. Okay, so taking a look at some of the gear, I would recommend gear that comes from the Fragment expeditions in Stardock, which is actually where I'm at now. And I would definitely recommend anything with double offenses. I know if you complete the Stardock portion of the campaign, if that makes any sense, you can get a little box, your Kala's box or something, family jewelry box, and inside it you will actually have a choice of your own companion gear. It's only single stat, but still I would recommend maybe taking one of the bigger stats, like combat advantage, for example. Alright, let's take a look at our actual companion bonuses, because yes, companions are for more than just summoning them and having them follow us around. So one of the first things we should look at is potency. It's very weak, but it's kind of the only one that really works around increasing your damage. So yeah, on defense, Minstrel is the way to go. It's the only one that gives power, and honestly, none of the other defense bonuses are any good. So just keep stacking that power. Next is the Mercenary. It's offense and it grants power. Most of your offenses should include ones that grant power, like the Baby Deep Crow or the Ghost. The more power you can stack, honestly, the better. Utility is a little tricky. I do have the Compy, but the Compy is kind of expensive nowadays, I think. I mean, the bonus is great, but if we look this thing up on the auction house, I used to see them selling for like 15 million. Yeah, okay, they're like 11 million. It's not worth that amount of astral diamonds, guys. Don't feel pressured to spend on it. Some alternatives might be, let me think. The Kenku. The Kenku Archer does grant power, so the next best one would probably be that after the Alpha Compy, actually. Yeah, a Kenku. But they start off at green, so it'll take quite a bit of either Astral Diamonds or companion upgrade tokens to upgrade it, but all's well that ends well. This just came to mind. I think there's a crystallized golem that a lot of people use, because I think it also grants power. Is that a utility though, or is that a defense? I'd have to look into that one, but I do know a lot of people who use it. So it's an option, but as said, it's not necessary. Just try to get something particularly with power. Because, I mean, at the end of the day, that's really all you need to be aiming for. So the last thing we need to look at is mounts. And luckily, mounts aren't too complex. You have your movement speed, your stat, which your stat should honestly be power. Aim for something with either 5,000 power or 10,000 power. But even if it's just an epic mount with the 5k power to start with, it's definitely better than nothing. But towards endgame, you probably want to aim towards having a legendary mount that gives you that 10k power. Right now, the best combat power is from the Bat Swarm. A good alternative can be the one from the Tensor's Disc, but it still doesn't meet up to the Bat Swarm. So either one is okay, but definitely recommend the Bat Swarm over any other power. So looking on to insignias now, that's your stable. Honestly, when you get insignias, you need to worry most about stats and don't worry so much about the insignia bonuses, because honestly, they do very little and most of them kind of suck. The ones I'm using, anyways, is Gladiator's Ghoul. I don't know. It increases your movement speed. Artificer's Persuasion reduces your cooldowns when you use an artifact power. And then I have some like the Wanderers and the Treasurers that they just give you a little bit of either Astral Diamonds or Refinement Points. But most of these insignias aren't going to do much for you. Most of my insignias really should be updated to power ones because you actually get a lot of stats from these, particularly when you have legendary insignias anyway. In case anyone asks, no, you don't need legendary mounts to add on legendary insignias. You can add them on to even a common mount. So I'll just toss that out there. But yeah, I wouldn't stress too much about having the best insignia bonuses. What counts the most is having the best stats from them. So I'm noticing now that I'm actually done editing this video, I didn't mention enchantments. There is not a whole lot to add. I would mostly just aim to fill your offense slots with radiance and upgrade those radiance from the beginning because they are really expensive at higher ranks. Don't waste your resources on other types of enchantments. And on defenses, I would probably add as well either Savages, Brutals, or Radiant enchantments as well. Darks might not be so bad, but if anything, maybe Azures as well because they offer defense, and defense can be a little tricky to stack up sometimes. So just wanted to add that. Thanks for watching. Subscribe and stay safe during this lovely quarantine period.